All right, Bradley Thomas here, and this is the interview for Andrea Carter. So I had a big technical glitch on this one, and I didn't notice it until after or during the actual interview. What happened is Google Hangout only recorded her talking. So I am actually kind of like a voiceover in this interview. So you'll have to forgive if it looks a little weird that I'm talking for a few minutes and Andrea is just staring at the camera. So forgive me on that part. But otherwise, the interview I thought was really great, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And have a great day, guys. Talk to you soon. Oh, and let me know, let me know too what you thought about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'd love to hear how it actually helps you, and if there's anything that it brought light to, in your life. Talk to you soon. Bye. All right. I'm Bradley Thomas, and this is the Art of Changing Your Life Coaching, and we are talking about the Take the Road to Freedom Summit today, where we're going to learn how to find your purpose. And today my guest is Andrea Carter, and she is helping redefine the modern definition of successful women and women leaders so they can blaze forward with impact. She's the CEO and founder of the Wealthy Women Warrior. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, thanks for having me, Bradley. Nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And, I brought you on today because you know your purpose and you're helping others, specifically, women, help them find their purpose so they can go out and blaze forward and make an impact in the world. So, and this whole thing is about helping people find their purpose. So, welcome and thank you again. So how, let's just kind of jump into your story and how you found your purpose, and if you could define that too.
Sure. So I think as you mentioned in my introduction, my purpose is really to help women redefine what it means to be successful. The women I typically work with are very similar to me. I grew up in a household where both my parents were entrepreneurs, and I learned at a very young age to be very, very independent. And with that independence, what the messaging that I internalized was that if I wanted to have anything or do anything or be anything, I would push to make that happen.
Yeah.
And really what I'm seeing a lot of in my inner circle and with the ambitious, successful women that I work with is that a lot of us have children. A lot of us are CEOs or, either in corporate or running our own business. And there's this ongoing struggle. There's this ongoing internal struggle with shame, with things never being enough, with feeling like, we may not be good mothers or we may not be good at our job because our work is so distracted and everything, it's like a juggling act that we're constantly playing. And so, I watched my mom when I was a kid. She was a very successful realtor. And what happened with her was that it was like she went into this state of not being able to handle it anymore. Instead of being able to take a break, she just pushed harder and harder and harder. And it showed up in ways that ended up looking like she was trading her family life for success. And I remember, being a young girl and saying, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to do that. And then in my early 30s, I'll never forget it. There I was. And I was so close to that, like so close to that it's still, even thinking back to it, it brings up emotional triggers for me because I wanted to be an amazing mom. I wanted to be a successful woman. I wanted to be a successful business woman. And I had always had the belief that I could do it all. And then there I was in my early 30s feeling like a complete and utter failure. So, when I was a kid, the Greek mythology was a huge interest of mine. And I loved it. Well, I'm 5'11", and in grade 5, I showed up in my grade 5 class, And everyone thought I was the teacher because I was 5'11" in grade 5 and like fully developed. And, you know, when I sat down at the desk, everyone kind of went, oh my, like, what's the teacher doing at the desk?
I thought you were going to say you taught class.
No, I wasn't that quick. I wasn't a quick-witted youngster. And actually, you know, it was funny because at that point, I actually dove into Greek mythology because it was a way for me to learn how to protect myself. Because you can imagine, grade 5, fully grown, you know, fully developed, the social constraints and confinements and conditioning that were happening at that time were extremely painful. And in a way, it was like I dove into that psychology so that I could escape. And what I didn't realize that back then, it was actually like setting the stage for the Jungian psychology and my degree in psychology, and then going into, you know, all of the background that I've done, so that I could create my own feminine warriors and archetypes, so that I could use that system to help myself. Because when I was there, like when I was in that, you know, place of being so frustrated and so overwhelmed and feeling like a failure.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was earning great money. I still earn great money, but it was earning great money at a cost back then, whereas now it's earning great money, loving what I do, and then still having family time.
Yeah.
And so the purpose became about diving into the archetypes so that I could understand my behaviors, so that I can understand that this was actually just a part of the behavioral, the patterning, the gifts and the challenges, and that the more I could step into that, the more I could actually alleviate myself of the shame game I was playing.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, of taking off, I call it emotional armor, because for women, what we'll do is we'll have the perception, or we'll give off the perception, no, I'm fine. Everything's perfect. Great. You know, got my nails done, my hair's done, got my lipstick on, and I'm fine. And it's not. And it's not. And it was like being able to remove my emotional armor. And for a while, I was calling it getting raw to get real. And I don't believe that anymore. I said that for a number of years because it was like you had to feel the pain. And what's happened is, as I've evolved this 8 wealthy woman warrior archetypal system, is that it's not about having to get raw. It's about having to tune into a very quiet place. It's about being able to relax into the realness. So instead of feeling like you're pushing for something, it's like you're able to receive it. And Bradley, like, I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about. It's not it's not just unique to women, right? But we're so conditioned to drive the force forward instead of looking at ways to take off that emotional armor that's actually keeping us further from what we want.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's very similar for guys. It's, you know, they have to put on that face of that whatever the social norms in every culture. You know, for the guy, they got to be the big, powerful, you know, all of that. And sometimes that outplay, or, you know, overplay. I don't know if overplay is a word, but I mean it seems like that in my mind, that just goes over who they really are. And you can still be someone who's confident and seems like a leader or in that man role, but you don't have to play to that role that isn't really authentically you. And I think that's what you're getting to say, except you work more specifically with women to bring that out in themselves. And I like what you said. You used to use the word raw, but that kind of has a different connotation to it, and it seems like it's more like you're just going to find who you really are and like step into it. And then once you step into that, you're able to be really authentic, and you just be yourself, kind of like when you're a kid and didn't care. Run around in your underwear and just being, you know, crazy. But I'm not saying you have to run around in your underwear to be a successful, powerful woman. But I think people get the idea, that that you just step into your authenticity, and that's when things start to happen, and you do start to receive things too as it happens.
Right,
So,
and that's why relaxing. It's relaxing into your realness.
mm-hmm.
And I think really the wealthy woman warrior is about being authentic, being your brilliant self, and being connected all at the same time. So it really is about being able to take that armor off and still remain empowered. And for a lot of women, we feel like if we take the armor off, if we stop, and this is one of the things that I've noticed is that for a lot of women, we've been conditioned to play in the old boys club.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost like we're playing in the old boys club at work, and then at home we're trying to be these soft, like loving beings. And so in a way we're living two separate lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's learning how to integrate that so that you're neither one of those, but that you can just be in the moment and still command a presence. You don't have to push things to have people really hear you. And it is about hearing what needs to be heard and saying what needs to be said and feeling what needs to be felt. But using that so that you can communicate from a place of, okay, well, what is it that I really want right now? And conveying that instead of either the emotional pushing or the, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough.
Yeah. Now, why don't you have your system and of helping people, essentially, find their purpose so they can kind of step into it. And I don't know if we have enough time to go through all of it, but maybe if you could give us some of the glimpses of it and step through that so people get an idea of like, okay, well, this is how you help people find their purpose so they can step into it.
Sure. So it always starts with an assessment. There's an assessment, it takes 8 to 10 minutes. And you go through it and basically find out what your top 3 archetypes are.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did when I created the archetypes was I didn't want to use like just the warrior or the maverick or because those are our typical archetypes that we have. And so I created 8 unique archetypes that are based on the Nord warriors, the Amazonian warriors, and then the Greek warriors as well, Greek goddesses. And so in the assessment, what happens is that you learn which are your top 3 and then which one is your last. And then what I do is I take you through a series of different programs so that you can see what your gifts are, how it could be that the top 3 archetypes might be challenging each other or they may be in alignment, but you're not seeing where your behaviors are creating some of the issues.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that because it's not like somebody saying, oh, you're bad, it's about looking at this system and going, oh my gosh, this is how I'm acting, or this is how I'm tuning into things, and this is how it's playing out in my life. And then I use what I call the feminine leadership coaching method, which I developed, and we go deeper into asking specific questions about money, about leadership, and about relationships. And so really it's about formatting these 3 aspects of life and bringing them forth by means of the archetypes. Now,
if you had to draw out a few questions from those, and if someone's watching right now and they just want to get a little bit started towards their, to find out and really help pull that from within, what are some good questions that they could start asking themselves and start listening for their inner authentic self?
Yeah, so there's 2 that I really love to use. The first one is, if I couldn't use the excuse that I've been using right now, what would happen? So if I can no longer tell myself that this is the way it is, mm-hmm. what would my action be? Or what could I do instead?
Yeah. I like how you phrase that. Is that, if I wasn't telling myself that I wasn't in this situation, I think there's a lot of different ways to frame that, and I have a couple myself, but I like the way you phrase it because there's other ways to put it, and what is what I'm trying to say. But the way you phrase it threw me off, obviously. And I think that's good. I think that's exactly what you want to do with someone is you want to throw them off their game a little bit and really get them to think about, oh, wow, if my life wasn't like what it is right now, what in the heck would I be doing? And if you can go to that question, that starts activating those that inner self that sometimes people like to go towards, like the childhood aspect, like what you love to do as a kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that.
And I think that that's part of the problem too, is that all of us have a story. There's not a person out there that doesn't have a story. And what's interesting is that I love to observe when people are going into their story, because you can watch it happen. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden they'll be engaged, they'll be talking, they'll be like, there's something, and then there's a trigger that happens, and all of a sudden it's like whoosh, and they're in auto, they're in Zoom mode, and there's no stopping them. It's like they're on the train and they want to jump off so badly, and they can't. And so, those questions that I use, they're very psychologically driven, because the archetypes are all about your subconscious and your conscious mind, and allowing that conscious mind that we currently play with, the ego, if you will.
Yeah.
And, allowing the ego to have a break, allowing the person that we think we are to just quiet for just a moment, so that 3 or 4 or 5-year-old self, that's the wounded piece of us, that we can heal that, but we don't have to go to that. There's so many programs that go into, let's examine, all of the bad stuff that happened so that we can change it. But sometimes the old moldy banana peel, you've looked at it. You've looked at it hundreds of times. You don't need to look at the old moldy banana peel anymore to know that it's there.
Yeah.
So let's look at asking different questions so that you can trick that conscious mind, you can trick that ego into determining or discovering, okay, what is it that I do really want?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what you do really want, there's so many other questions, and some of the ones that come up to mind that are a little different are, what kind of pisses you off sometimes? Because if you take what upsets you, you really care about that, and it works for guys. Sometimes the word pisses off works for guys, and sometimes for girls, like what makes you cry, what really gets you upset. And if you can listen to that underlying thread of what actually is causing that, there's something probably in conflict of, like, whatever it is fighting what it made you mad, and that's why you care about it. Listen to that underlying piece, and then follow that thread further into your life, and you can start really digging to see that common thread that always comes up, and you can find that authentic self within there.
Sure, and I think the other piece of that is that we're so good at identifying what it is that we don't want.
Yeah.
We're good at being able to say, well, I don't want this. We're good at being able to state it in the negative.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things that I've always suggested is, instead of, whenever you're answering any question, don't look at what you don't want. Look for what you do want.
Mm-hmm.
So, if that's a feeling that you're looking for, that would mean, where are you finding your joy? What is it that allows you to make you feel empowered? What allows you to, what action, what environment, what activity makes you feel good?
What do you get lost in?
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of women that I'm working with right now, at first they have a really hard time answering that. It's like, well, Andrea, I don't even know. I don't know what makes me happy anymore, because I'm so far from my happiness that I feel so lost.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how often I feel that, and I know that feeling. So, when I looked at creating my business, I wanted to create a business that would help people reconnect to that and change, so that they would learn how to reframe and go after what they did want, what did make their heart soar.
When When you're working with someone, just if you could maybe think of a past client, what's something that someone can use, or maybe is there a technique or an exercise that can help them, go from that really far away, they're way down the rabbit hole of unhappiness, and they can't see their happiness. Is there something that you use to help people?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. One of the things that I'll have women do is I'll have them write for a full week, and it doesn't have to be long. It's 5 minutes of just conscious writing, where it's if you're I call it a twizzle. If you're in a twizzle, and you're really struggling, you're going to write 5 minutes of all of the bad stuff that's happening, all of the stuff that's stuck up here that you just so can't let go of. And it's that really drains our energy too.
Yeah.
And so instead of keeping it up here, write it out. Take 5 minutes, write it out, and then take 2 minutes and do a reframe. So what that means is, okay, so these are the bad things that are happening. Now, this is the stuff that's going on. What's the situation that I actually want? What's the outcome that I really want here? And what is it that I really want to happen? And how will this benefit me when it does happen?
Yeah. I think that takes someone, and one, it forces them to reframe it, which a lot of people don't do. And that's a huge thing for me. Like, I think that just comes naturally for me. I love learning about different perspectives of things. So forcing someone to reframe how they perceive things can make a huge difference. And I think that's what, coaches like you and us do, is that we just really hear what they're saying and then put it in a different light. And just by shining it in a different light, it becomes so much more obvious for them to see, not only big problems in their life, but, when you're trying to find your purpose. And usually, like for me, it's like once it actually happened, it was like a slap in the face, like, why didn't you think about this earlier? And I wish it was that easy for for everybody, but it's not, and it really just takes a reframe, a different perspective, so you can see it, and then it's that click that happens, and then.
Well, and we're not. Yeah, and I don't think that we're taught that. When I remember, my family, we're first generation Canadian, so both my parents are German. They came over when they were, very young, little. It was, about escaping Germany and coming to Canada for a new life. And so, from that perspective, I'll never forget my Oma, my grandma on my dad's side was so brilliant at doing this. And when I was a child, I remember I could be so quick to see all of the bad things. Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of bad things in our childhood. I mean, we didn't grow up in an ideal household, and yet in that household there were so many gifts that I didn't even see. And I'm who I am today, not in spite of my parents or that situation, but because of them.
Yeah.
And my Oma was brilliant at reframing, and I never ever saw that until probably when I got to my low point and realized I needed to have a change. And it was like, it might sound silly, but it was like I had this vision of her, this dream of her, where it was just like, she was like, in my mind, I could see her just saying, Andrea, where's the beauty in this? And I think that was one of the reasons that I started looking at, okay, well, what is it that I need to do differently?
Yeah.
Because if I stay here, this is so painful. This is so painful that it is way worse for me to remain where I am than to face any of my fears or anything else that's out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it reminds me, I went to a book launch last night, and the book is called Happy Work, and it was, he wrote the book because his mother was stuck in a job for 30 years, and she just stayed there because she wanted to support the family, and she never, obviously she was never able to meet someone like yourself, but she just stayed in it because she wanted to support her family. And I think that this conversation and his book and other people are doing similar things will help empower people so they can start seeing that other perspective and rephrasing. What did you say your grandma's name was? Oma?
Oma was what we called her.
Okay. My family's from Germany too, and they came over 1800s or something like that. Anyways, but giving people that new perspective just by having some tools and some someone to talk to. Obviously, if you hire a coach like yourself, it's not always like that, but just that reframing can give people such a fresh perspective that it's empowering to them and enlightening them, and will give them the fuel to go out and look, for more of their purpose, or to help other people, or just live a happier life. And that's what it's kind of all about, Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. What I was going to say was, you brought in the coaching influence, and I would have to say that, my OMA was what sparked it. But then from that moment, I decided, that was when I actually decided, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I actually found a coach. And when I found my first coach, my first mentor, it really changed everything. Mm-hmm. And it changed everything because it wasn't about her showing me what to do. It was about being asked the right questions. Mm-hmm. So that I could find what's right. And that's the cool part, right? Because nobody can give you this, like, here's the life you want on a platter. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. And yet, it does work that way if we're doing our own work, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was like, oh my gosh, I learned how to totally turn this around. And that was when I went and got certified as a mastery certified coach, because I knew that this line of work was so in alignment with my psychology background. It was so in alignment with my archetypal work. And I knew that using questions was the way to help people find really their purpose and be able to change their life, be able to step into, that messaging. As women, we're told we can be anything, have anything, and do anything. So what are you going to sacrifice to do it? What are you going to sacrifice to have it? What are you going to sacrifice to be it? And that's the wrong way of approaching it.
How can you,
and
how can you do it with both?
Exactly. It's not an either or. It's an and.
Mm-hmm. Right? I had the same epiphany actually. This week's been super busy. Is this week or last week? And it was, I've been super busy with launching the summit and doing all the work to get that ready. And I too am in the middle of, I just passed my coaching certification this past week, but I still have some other things to do with it. Yeah. And that whole process, I was getting stressed out. And my coach said to me, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And then that brings up a question in my mind, like, well, how am I supposed to keep pushing myself hard enough when I'm stressed out as it is, and like blah blah blah, and like, how's this all going to kind of fit into a line? And then I was doing a yoga session, and I had that thought of like I wanted to quit, but I was like, I just had enough of this. Like I pushed myself hard enough. I'm going to rest for a moment. And then the way she phrased the question and that my inner thought, I guess maybe had a conversation and talked to each other, and I figured out that basically I wasn't having fun with it anymore. I wasn't using and with it, and so now I've had a shift from how can I push myself further and have fun with it, because I'm a fun, goofy guy, and that's just who I am, So I think that and is really important. You don't have to give it all up. Sometimes it's just a mindset shift to get you into that perspective, And
I really, as you said, Bradley, I think it starts with our mindset. It really starts with our mindset. It starts with our awareness of what it is that we're actually saying to ourselves, mm-hmm. and the messaging that we're continuing to believe, the stories that we're repeating, in our mind, and then shifting it, and then looking at it and going, okay, is that really true? You know, I can't tell you how many times I had to ask myself, okay, so, and the women who are watching this will probably be able to relate to this, but as a mom, you know, my kids are young. I've got a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. And, you know, they were my miracle babies. I wasn't supposed to be able to have children. And yet there was this inner desire in me that I knew I wanted to be a businesswoman, and I knew that I had something greater that I needed to share with the world. I knew that there was a part of me that needed to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that internal voice that whenever I'm driving something forward or whenever I'm in go mode, it was the voice saying, you're being a bad mom. You're being a bad mom.
Ah.
And how hard that is and what it does to not only you emotionally, but it does to you mentally and physically. And it was like what I needed to start doing was challenging that. And I did. I started, Andrea, like in my mind, I would hear myself say, you're being a bad mom right now. And I would say, you know what, Andrea, stop it. That's not the truth.
Yeah.
And I had to start doing that. I had to start challenging it because otherwise I was going to be right where my mom was. And I love my mom. I realize now how much she sacrificed, but there are pieces where she's still repeating that same pattern. And I knew that that wasn't going to be the life that I wanted to live. I knew that life could be different.
Yeah, that's that inner voice. I mean, it gets so many people to not do things,
Yeah.
and it gets the really great people who have been super successful to do. They learn how to turn it off, and then the other voice, the superhuman, or whatever you want to call it, I call it the negative Nancy, which is the bad one. I need to have like a happy Herman or something inside your boy. The encouraging Aaron or something, the more positive inner voice that can come out. Once you're able to turn that off, I mean, it's huge. And I don't mean turn it off. I don't think it ever goes away. At least it hasn't for me. You're able to turn it down and recognize it, punch it in the face, kick it off to the side, shift it away, whatever you want to call, whatever works for you. Yes. Speaking of that, what is a way someone can help to learn to turn down that inner negative Nancy? I hope Nancy's not watching.
Well, I would say the first thing that I always look for is, again, I go back to the archetypes, because the archetypes, like, for example, there's one of the archetypes is Artemis, and Artemis is the goddess of the hunt. Mm-hmm. Now, Artemis is amazing. She is amazing at pushing forward. She's amazing at going after what she wants. She's amazing at, enduring the long hours. Where she struggles is in once something isn't exciting anymore, she gets bored.
Yeah.
And for her, that inner voice is going to play out very differently than someone like Freya, who's, Freya is more the goddess of prosperity and wealth, and she thinks big picture, and she's much more holistic rather than point specific like Artemis. Mm. And so, for Artemis, she is going to have the issue of hearing, okay, so all you need to do is take more action, take more action, take more action, do more, do more, do more, do more. And at some point for her, that is where she needs to look at herself and go, okay, so this is what my behavior is. This is what my patterning is.
Yeah.
So where can I stop this patterning? What is it that I need to believe about myself so that I can go into receiving?
Yeah.
Right? For Freya, on the other hand, she's kind of the opposite, like the polar opposite of Artemis. That's why I'm using these two examples. But yeah. Freya, she is so holistic that she goes into if it's meant to be, it'll happen. And what will often happen for her is that she gives up way too soon. So the internal voice in her mind is saying, oh, well, here's a challenge. If it's a challenge, then, change directions. You don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah, I didn't think of it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And then there's all these missed opportunities that if she had just waited just a little bit longer on the
Yeah.
other side of that challenge was this huge breakthrough. And so it's allowing her to go, okay, so here's a challenge. What is the gift in this challenge for me? And shifting that mindset from the perspective of understanding how our behaviors really do shape what we're thinking and
Hmm.
our experiences. What's happened to us in the past doesn't have to be what we project and have as our reality in the future.
Yeah. I didn't. I've been going down the. I don't want to say the way of thinking, but meditation's been my biggest thing within the past couple of years. Is that's helped capture and catch those, able to for me to catch those thoughts that are going on. But I never thought of it in the light that which you put is that the way that voice shows up is different for everybody, and sometimes it might be negative, or it might just be how they have seen the world. Um, so I think that's really cool, and that's kind of eye opening for me to in my coaching practice. I'll be able to started to identify if what type of person may need different types of tools so they can catch those voices a little different. So some fishes like different lures, I guess you could say.
Well, it's interesting too because I started with women only because I knew, like, I feel like the women that I've worked with, I can really help because I've been there. And then through my experiences, I mean, I've seen all of these different patternings, and I've interviewed thousands of women now on, what happens for them. And so the 8 personality types really, it's uncanny now when people take the assessment, they go, how did you know that? But it really had to do with pulling all of this information into one system. And now that I've done it for women, in a couple years, I'm working on finishing up my book right now, which will come out hopefully in the early fall.
Cool.
Yeah. But
It's a
once I've
process.
kind of rolled with that for a year, I know that I've already started with my ideas for the wealthy woman, or sorry, the wealthy male warriors as well, because I'm already starting to see, and I have men that are approaching me saying, Andrea, like, this still applies to me.
Hmm.
And my husband played professional football, and watching him transition, watching that archetype, watching the heart-centered man who struggles so much because he does feel, and in our cultures and a lot of our society, it doesn't translate into what we deem successful. So
Yeah.
there's all of these different personality types that are also starting to show themselves, and eventually I'll be working with those 8 archetypes for men as well. But right now, I'm just finding such a huge impact with the women warriors. So
Yeah. Well, you got to focus where your heart still sings and still needs to be sung, right?
absolutely.
So, I'll take the guys, you take the girls. We'll call it even. Yeah, congrats on the book. My book is actually, I just sent it off to the printers today for the first review, and that I know how that process is. It's a lot of work. And mine was just a way for me to get out my voice, just because I had to get something out. So. Cool. So we're kind of winding down, and I wanted to touch just a little bit on business. When you're helping your clients, I mean, we could talk hours on this subject too, but I guess we'll have to keep it brief. When you're working with your clients, what are first few things you start working with them in their businesses? To help them get started. I guess it really, whichever aspect you want to take that, because you
Sure.
go, you go all over the board with it.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's typically 3 areas for women. It's money, relationship, and then business,
Mhm.
or leadership. I kind of lump leadership and business together. I always like to start with money, and most people will go, Andrea, why would you start with money? And the reason I start with money is because most women have a very hard time understanding their worth and their value.
Mm.
And money is something that we deal with every single day. Our connection with it is, it pulls on us. And the messaging, we talked a lot about mindset. We talked a lot about what that does to us. And depending on, again, the archetypes, we have different ways of handling our money. And money translates into what we're valuing for self and what we believe we're worthy of.
Yeah.
And, Bradley, I'm sure that you've had money stories told to you your whole life, especially coming over from Germany. We have all of these funny messages that we're told. And again, going back to that pushing to make it all happen,
mm-hmm.
It's the sacrificing. It's the putting our happiness and our joy on hold because we're believing that when we finally get to this amount of success, then I'll be able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right? And
mm-hmm.
so for the programs that I teach, at least, and that I coach through, for me it's really important for women to have an immediate connection, an immediate shift with what they're actually worth and their values, and that they are valuable. So that coaching shows up again in the archetypes, and then we work through their relationships with money. We do a breakthrough on the stories that they've been telling themselves, and we do a lot of reframing on what it is that they want. So, for example, a lot of women who are CEOs or business owners will often wait before they hire someone because they don't feel that they have enough money. And yet, that becomes a bottleneck to their business growth.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that, it's about learning how to use the mindset of where you want to be,
mm-hmm.
even in the moment of whatever you're in right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's that shift of really believing in yourself enough to invest in your future and be confident while you're walking through it. Because once you do that, you're really saying to yourself, you're saying to the world that I believe in myself, that I'm going to invest X, Y, and Z into someone that's going to help me get there with whatever service they provide. And they're going to do it faster than you can because hopefully they're a professional,
Well, and that's just it. I don't know what the stats are in the States, but in Canada, the majority, so it's like 80% of small business owners, and this can be business owners who are still earning between $100,000 and $200,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they're not earning money, but their profit margins are so tight that it's not like they have a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah.
80% of those women, instead of them going out and investing in themselves and getting the coaching that they need,
mm-hmm.
are trying to do it all by free online help. And what's happening is that they're not allowing themselves to believe in themselves enough to take that leap to make it start to shift so that they can start to receive what they really want.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had a client email me today. She asked me, she was trying to get some strategy around what she had the whole day off and what should she do. And I said, well, you need to focus on the next thing that's going to take you to the next step, And we worked through a few other little things, and then she emailed back. She goes, "It's nice not to go at this alone, And I'm like, "That's perfect. That's exactly what people like you and me do. Is that you don't have to go it alone. You don't have to have your business and have no one else to bounce ideas off of. You can talk to your family, but unless they're doing the same exact thing, they don't know where you're going. So they're not. They may give you well-intentioned advice, but it may not be good business advice or life advice when you're,
Well, and if somebody, if somebody hasn't been there, they have no idea how to offer examples. And if they've never been there, they have the belief that they can't do it or that you can't do it. And so, because they haven't done it, there's this negative connotation that falls onto it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, my husband he's a brilliant, brilliant man, and he's in the financial industry, but he and I do a lot of, we invest together, yada, 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 but he's not my business coach. He's not my
Yeah.
business coach because he works in a very different model than what I work in. And I can go to him and I can say, hey, Andrew, babe, this is what's going on. And he'll be like, you know what? That rocks. Good for you.
Yeah.
But he won't try and fix it for me because he knows. He's like, no, we've been through this. You know what you need. And part of the communication that he and I have worked through is that I've learned through the archetypes in my program how to really ask for what it is that I want and ask for what I need without the expectation that I'm not going to get it. And for a lot of women, we really believe that, okay, well, we might ask for it or we might need it, but the minute we voice it, nobody's going to actually be there for us.
Yeah.
We really come from the perspective that we have to do it all on our own.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think you can step into that a little further, and it's like you say that, and you ask for what you really want, but also too, it may not happen instantly or in that exact moment. It may just take a little while longer. You know. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. That's totally okay. Yeah. So for me, when I look at my clients and I look at their needs and I look at you know, really that business model, the reason we start with money and worth and value is to break through some of those patterns and habits and belief systems. And that really initiates the process for women to step into being the leader that they really can be.
Yeah.
And a lot of the women that I work with, I mean, they are powerhouses. They're powerful women leaders. And yeah, when they first come to me, they're like, Andrea, yeah, I've done this. Yeah, I've done that. Like they diminish their achievements. They diminish their value. They even diminish the awards and the accolades that they may have because we're taught not to celebrate what we've done.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's the big thing. If you don't celebrate what the good things you've done, you're not reinforcing that moment. And then when in other moments everybody doesn't celebrate, but the negative things get reinforced and reinforced and reinforced and reinforced, and then you go down the negative pattern. If you don't reinforce the small little wins to make them bigger wins, it makes a huge difference when you do. You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're kind of winding down here. What is Let's see, I've got two last things. One, we need to find out how people can get a hold of you. And in that, if someone's resonating with what you're saying, how would you describe a perfect client that you work with?
Sure. So what I decided to do for the Art of Changing Your Life special was I opened up a page so that they can get their own assessment. So what they can do is actually go online and download for free their ability to find out what their archetypes are.
Cool.
So yeah, if you go to wealthywomanwarriorfreegiveaway.com or even wealthywomanwarrior.com, you can find it, but the direct link is wealthywomanwarriorfreegiveaway.com to download your assessment. And then really the women that I work with are highly ambitious, highly motivated. You know, they're earning or they've earned a substantial profit already in their business, but they're stuck. So the majority of them, their margins are tight, their profit is tight, and a lot of them are really struggling. They're unhappy.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say that a lot of them would be mompreneurs or
I like that.
yeah, mompreneurs or
parentpreneurs.
Some are in corporate, but essentially the biggest piece is that they are women warriors who are pushing to make it all happen, and the transformation is learning how to receive so that they can actually have the life that they want and feel empowered and really enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah. I think it's really cool that you're helping other women be more successful in their own lives. So I encourage anybody who's watching this, go check it out. I mean, if that resonated with you, go check out the Wealthy Woman Warrior .com and check out Andrea. And again, any last words of advice if you only had 1 or 2 minutes to give someone?
I would say never give up on yourself. That is my motto that I live by. It's not never give up. It's never give up on yourself, because that brilliance that's in you is so important to allow the world to see you shine.
All right. I like it. Cool. Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you so much for being here today, and you have yourself a great day.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye, everyone.